Field Marshal Sisi said to the people, "Don't you already know that you are the light of our eyes, or what?" A few months later, he was elected the perpetual autocrat of the country. It had hurt his sensibility that the perpetuity part of his election wasn't equally clamorously demanded by each and every single person among both the elites and the rabble. Instantly, he gave a title to this subtle disparity in the fieriness of the clamors that insisted on the perpetuity of his all-sweeping administration. He called it the sting in my heart. This was the only disappointment he couldn't openly bewail in the presence of his councillors, to whom he was expressing his disappointment about effectively everything else, especially their mediocre involvement in the recovery of the glory of the mother homeland, the motherland home, the land home mother, the housewife land, or words to that effect. The sting in his heart was his innermost grief and most private woe that he didn't confide even to his mirror as he stood in front of her wearing his impeccably ironed camouflage uniform with all its badges of honor shining to defy the camouflaging purpose. It was the very shining of those very badges that prevented him from confessing his woe to the mirror. He wondered silently, with a hot sigh. I rescued this nation. Then why would any individual thereof entertain the possibility that I would be unfit to continue to rescue it at some point, and therefore it wouldn't be particularly necessary that my leadership should continue forever? During his army training in his youth, he privately trained himself not to cry. I will resign. Thus he sometimes calorically allows a caprice to lead his thinking. If some of them think my rule could be questionable 30 years from now, none of them will have me now. His wife, Intisar Amir, is the only person who heard him speaking of resigning, but he told her that the reason was to dedicate more time to his family. He kept threatening with resignation, but there was no one on the other end to threaten. And he kept threatening with resignation, but there were no reverberations to be heard. And he kept threatening with resignation, poor Sisi, but to no avail were the threats, and he kept threatening with resignation until he had got an idea. It dawned on him that no man in all history had ever needed to appeal to another man to believe that dividing something by two results in two halves. It dawned on him that independent groups of people living on the opposite edges of the planet had always made that same computation without the need for their farthest ancestors to meet. He thought that a similar computation could be the cure for the sting in his heart. That is, people must deduce the necessity of the perpetuity of his regime independently without the need for his rallying, subjugation, or luring. That was the foundational stratum of his three strata idea. The second one was identifying the impediment that was preventing people from making that deduction smoothly. Sisi decided that the problem was terminological, that such Latin terms as dictator in perpetuum or imperator, or such adjectives as despotic or absolute are what makes some people find the matter a little ominous, and therefore a purely logical term must be applied to allow minds to make that logical deduction. The third stratum of the idea was to find that purely logical term, and he found it promptly. He must be thought of as the axiomatic ruler. Sisi is finally able to speak openly about the matter because it is no longer personal. It's objective, methodological, logical, and axiomatic. His counselor, Jamaluddin, tended to him daily. His wife pandered to him daily. He convened them daily and talked to them together, and today is no exception, except that he intended to find a way to touch on the topic of the sting in his heart. He wants those two to be the first two to make the deduction independently, and then a few millions must follow.